But what we're going to do today is celebrate TOPLAP. So 20 years, it's pretty awesome. And so we've got some people here on the stage who have been with TOPLAP, some from the very beginning, and some people who really lived through the history. So the goal of today is to just have an informal discussion about that. And I've got some videos and some other things from different points in the history that we can share, and also anybody here from the panel or anybody on the stream who wants to share anything, just let us know. Before we start, there, in terms of chat, there is if you're following the stream, there is a chat there. So if anybody has any questions or wants to contribute anything, you can just put it into the chat in Euler Room. So I'll try and keep track of that. So let's go ahead and get started. So for each one of the panel, if you could just take a minute and introduce yourself and talk about your history with live coding, history with TOPLAP in specific. Alex, do you want to start?
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, I'm Alex. I've been involved with algorithmic music since the year 2000, which was a bit of an anticlimax in lots of ways, but then it got really going when I found out about live coding. Mainly working with my friend Adrian Ward in a band called Slub. How much do you want us to talk at this point? Hi, Alex. Is it just a short intro? Yeah,
just a short intro. We can certainly come back and talk about anything else. And just one other thing, in terms of time, I didn't really set a time limit. My idea was that we would just keep going until we ran out of things to say. I guess we have a hard stop at noon UTC. I guess it's 8 p.m. Sorry, it's noon my time, but at 8 p.m. But at any rate, go ahead, Alex.
It's actually finishing midnight UTC. So yeah, and more recently made a live coding environment called Tidal Cycles, and at the moment sort of here in Sheffield exploring algorithmic patterns, so kind of looking at the wider algorithmic scene, expanding to kind of ancient algorithmic arts like weaving. And at the moment I'm working with a artist called Anu Reddy, who is looking at the algorithmic patterns in Kolam, which is a Tamil algorithmic drawing art form. Yeah, greetings from Sheffield. Who's next? Shall I pick someone? Shelly, next on my screen.
I'm Shelly. I guess I've been aware of live coding since about 2007, but I didn't really participate actively until around 2012. I was I was at the first Algo Rave in 2012, but not as a performer. Started actively performing from 2013. I guess I have been quite active in organizing and teaching workshops, sort of around 2014-15 onwards. I was in a band called Algo Babes with Joanne Armitage, and we taught a lot of women-only live coding workshops together. Most recently, I've been trying to build a little live coding community in Newcastle upon Tyne, which is the city where I'm based. Just for the last year, so we're quite new and fresh, but it's also quite exciting. Oh, I'm supposed to pick someone. Rennick.
Hi, I'm Rennick Bell, and I currently live in Saigon, Vietnam, and I came across live coding. I was just checking the date. It would have been August 31st, 2004, it looks like. And that's the date of Alex's article about hacking Perl in nightclubs, which I saw come across in Slashdot. And I thought it was really a funny joke. And I laughed for a long time about it and thought it was just a joke and ignored it for a little while until I started in graduate school trying to revise my super collider system. And I realized that I was having much more fun just hacking on the code live than building the GUI that I was trying to build. And then I sort of got hooked on live coding from that time in about 2006. And at that time, around that time, Alex was working on tidal cycles, and I was interested in it and learning Haskell, and I wanted to use Tidal, but he said he wasn't ready. And so then I just started to make my own system. And so I made a system called Conductive, and I used that for a long time. And then COVID happened, and I wanted to find a way to be able to hack on my live coding system at work. And it's very difficult to justify teaching Haskell to students. So then since that time, I've been messing with JavaScript. And I had an especially fun time teaching Hydra to junior high school students for a semester. That was pretty cool. And I worked with Joanna Chikau to try to port my system to Conductive from Haskell to JavaScript. And I'm getting really close to having a nice public release of that. And otherwise, then I'm going to see what kind of live coding we can get up to in Southeast Asia. In about a month, I'll go to Bangkok and check out an event there and do a performance. And so it's nice to do a bit more of that now because it's all sort of been on hold for me since the beginning of COVID. Okay, that's probably enough about me. Alexandra.
Thank you, Rennick. Hello, everyone. Rennick said something about making a GUI in Super Collider, and I was so into it. Like back in 2010, I was discovering Super Collider in Mexico in the National Center for the Arts, and I was making my GUIs to play electric guitar, like improvise and make my own effects. And then we came up with live coding. And then we had the Vivo in Mexico City, where everybody, Julian, Alex, and a lot of people came from Europe and the United States. And then we really, it really became a big thing in Mexico City in our scene. And since then, I have included live coding in everything I do. I am an independent artist, a musician, and a sound artist, and everything I do is basically live coded. And I was looking at right now the date when I started using tidal cycles, and it was here in Berlin in 2015. I remember the first performance I made was with Alex's patterns, and since then, well, I have been exploring patterns. Thank you, Alex, so much for everything you have done. Okay, so Julian now.
Hi everybody. Yeah, so the story to tell. I mean, I wanted to say that, like, Renata and me, sorry, the name is just Julian, but this is Renata and Julian. We studied art at the Hamburg Art Academy, HFBK, in the 90s and in the early 2000s. And with Kurt Alsleben and Antje Eske were part of the teachers there who taught conversational art and art without audience. And so we were kind of in this very open performative context where there were also digital systems taught, which was kind of an artistic way of using computers. And at that time, I got to know Super Collider. Like, you know, like the, oops, funny things are happening. We also had video conferences there. Actually, I don't know if anyone knows the CUC-Me, that was like a weird system in the 90s, which looked a bit like what this looks like, very strange, but it was a bit more fun because everybody was really doing crazy things with it because it was new. But yeah, so when I first got Super Collider 2, Super Collider yes too. I thought, I read the help file and thought, you can change code while it's running. And that was really great, amazing. Rennick, it's like a bit like the joke that you thought. It was good. I thought it's possible, but then I realized, no, it's not true. I just misread the help file. But then, after quite some time, we did network music. Renata and me made some workshops in network music and things like that. The idea kind of got stuck in the background that you could possibly change code while it's running. And yeah, so this became a thing that one could try, and it kind of then popped up. And we organized a conference, Changing Grammars, 20 years ago, pretty much like in February. And everybody got together and realized this is something really to be done and to work on together. So this was really, in retrospect, a great moment, and also a fun. It was not a big event, but a small, kind of small symposium. So is there anything one should say about that?
Maybe being part of PowerBooks Unplugged, which is, I think, I mean, that was for me more the so I never get into developing. I just was playing with PowerBooks Unplugged and together with Julian.
That was also quite an interesting thing to move between something like learning something together and playing concerts. So there's no separation between like doing something together just for exploration and having an audience. Yes, and so things developed, and we worked on JitLib, and Super Collider became kind of a general thing for a lot of live coding environments, and I tried to support it as a developer a little bit. Thanks for that, for the great continuation of that very small beginning. So I don't want to talk too long, but so this was just to tell a story maybe not so many people know about the beginning, or maybe not beginning, but the point of retrospective recognition. Sarah.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Sarah Groff-Palermo. I think maybe of everybody here, I'm the newest live coder. So I got started, Kate Sicchio, who has done a lot of live code work, but I think most people know a lot of dance work. She was a professor of mine in graduate school, actually, at New Media Grad School, and we became friends. And after I graduated, she started the Live Code NYC chapter with some other friends of ours. And I originally just went to the meetings to hang out because I missed my friends from grad school. So they were like, come hang out, we'll yell about compilers. And I was like, that sounds like fun, obviously. And so I went, and Kate was like, we should play together. And I said, oh, I don't know. And she said, but you could write a visuals framework. And I was like, okay, now I'm in. Like, she was like, but what if you wrote some code? And I was like, okay, now we will perform. And yeah, we did one show. The first show we did, I was totally hooked. So that framework I wrote is called Rohrhuber, and it's like a closure script library to write SVGs live. I'm a big web person, so I wrote that. And I'd actually met Olivia, who makes Hydra, before that, even before I started grad school at a different program. So I knew some other visuals people. I decided to go the more like geometries route. And so since then, yeah, Cody's played a bunch. I think 2018 was the year that we played the most, and we played something like 30 shows that year. It was really fun. And so, yeah, I really like the improvisational approach. So now even with video work and other visual work I do, I always sort of try to bring improv to it. And then, yeah, and I really like the community. So I've been helping out with like the TOPLAP Mastodon and stuff, because I think that like the making the work part is really fun. But I also think that like without the kind of open community that Live Code has, I don't think just the work would be like enough to keep me around. Like they both feel really important. So That's me. Am I the last person, or did you speak high harmonics? Are you the one that's left?
No, I already spoke. So thanks, everyone. Those are great introductions and touched on a lot of themes. So some of the topics I want to touch on today are just the history of TOPLAP, and we've already covered a few things. But another thing is what exactly does TOPLAP stand for? And I think it depends on who you ask. But before I get into that, let's see. Okay, so this is an archive playlist which I put together, which is on the the TOPLAP blog, and it's got archives going back in YouTube to 2017, these live streams, and then there's some earlier ones. So I drew some material from that, and let me just see if I can get this one to play here. Okay, share this.
Real occurrence of programmers laughing at performers.
Time out, performers. Lose all precedent.
The temporary organisation for the proliferation of live audio programming.
Typing old programs leaves art paralysed.
TOPLAP doesn't stand for anything. It's not actually an acronym. The idea that it stands for something is just sort of a myth that's followed the group around since its inception. But no, TOPLAP doesn't stand for anything.
All right, so TOPLAP, you heard it there. TOPLAP doesn't stand for anything. I think that's pretty funny. The old wiki page, which is really fun to see. Again, it kind of brings back so many memories. But we have here the authoritative source, Transdimensional Organization for the Parsimony of Live Artistic Programming. So does anybody have anything else to offer about what TOPLAP stands for?
Yeah, it used to, the Wikipedia page, that page used to give a different acronym each time you refreshed the page. It had a random selection. So, but that seems to have broken at some point in its history. To see if I can get that working again at some point.
Not even randomness works anymore.
No, seems not. But yeah, that was it was a backronym. I sort of started from laptop and turned it into TOPLAP. I think it was Nick Collins who came up with that name at the end of the Changing Grammars.
Well, I think I remember the smoky bar, the Zoe bar, where people were throwing around acronyms.
Yeah.
I think yes, it could be, but I think it was quite a mess of acronyms. I think it's a secret what it means, and it's there to be found out. Nobody knows it. We don't know it either. So.
Yeah, I think I always associate it with the temporary organisation for the promotion of live algorithm programming, and the temporary bit has been a bit overlooked. And actually, Nick Collins himself maintains that at some point we did disband it because it was supposed to be temporary, and we had some event where it was the end of TOPLAP, but I don't remember.
It was actually TOPLAP.
Could be, yeah.
Cool. I'm going to go back to this video and just play a little bit above it. One of the topics I'd like to hear some comment on is just the early days and what the culture was. And this this early documentary is really interesting, and when you watch it, one of the things I got away from it that I took away from it was that there was it felt like that, at least this group who made the documentary, it felt a little bit like a counterculture theme, that there was kind of some reaction against maybe academic computer music or just what coding meant, and that they were really trying to make live coding be something very different. But let's just hear a little bit of this. And
I'm making live music performance using computers more interesting by exposing its inner workings and creating as much of it in front of the audience as I can.
Together with this group of fellow artists, musicians, and programmers, we're exploring the idea of making music live by writing software as part of the performance.
I'm most interested, I think, where it engages one of the real foundations of computer music, algorithms. They can themselves become artistic material, and their live manipulation demonstrates a new skill for the computer music performer.
See what we're doing, and we make sure that they can hear and that they'll dance along with our music.
I just started a series of text pieces where the performers get a chance to rewrite the instruction sets they follow during the performance. These may become implemented as networked computer programs, perhaps. For live performance, I did achieve 2 of my live coding ambitions in the last year, writing a new DSP routine in C in front of an audience, and then using it. Also, programming a sonified game of snakes and ladders and manipulating that game all during the gig. As an example of programming something that was contextually relevant, that meant something to the audience, that meant something to the festival.
so, any thoughts or comments? You know, what was it like in the early days? What was the culture like? What was live coding, you know, in 2004, 2005 versus what it is now?
Yeah, I guess this is a question for Julian, Renata, and I. As I think everyone else is a bit out of this stage. I don't know. We maybe.
No, I think I have the impression that there are a couple of things that came together in 2004, and they lived in parallel. I think there's a level at which live coding was just an everyday practice of people that just did it not for an audience, but just as a form of experimentation. And at the same time, there was a stronger audience-oriented thing that is stronger featured in, of course, in the documentary material, because that's typically what gets documented, right? The public performances and so on. And I think both have this this kind of feeling of breaking with a traditional stage setup in some way, right? In very various ways. Of course, also by reaffirming stage, or like making things visible or accessible that are normally not visible, exposing stuff like mistakes or breaking down. I mean, what improvisation does. So, and part of it, I think, was a counter reaction, and part of it was just a continuation of something that was, I think, maybe practiced outside music in a very normal way.
Yeah, I guess it was a reaction against the introduction of the laptop to the stage, where you'd have these quite intense performances where there was nothing happening. There was no performance apart from looking at the back of a laptop while someone gazed into the front of it. moving their mouse slightly. But I think more interestingly for me, it was also a kind of reaction against, maybe this is more personal, but against generative art. So the idea that the computer was being creative. Lots of talk about Brian Eno's generative music, where he'd do phasing patterns, and Koan Pro that he was promoting sort of as his own, but I don't think he had anything to do with it really, apart from using it. And just a general kind of circular discussion about authorship around the use of algorithms in the generation of art. For me, live coding was about, as a programmer, sort of asserting myself as a creative person. The idea of creative coding wasn't around. There wasn't any coolness around computer programming or geek culture. It was very male dominated then, of course, even more than it is now. It's definitely in a dip in terms of diversity. But it was a kind of, well, Amy Coe says some really interesting things about computer programming culture being this kind of place where certain people could go who weren't really part of mainstream society, even though it was male dominated. Well, I think that's interesting from today's perspective, because then there was a feeling of it being post-AI, and now that's probably going to happen quite soon again. We're probably going to have another post-AI time, either later this year or next year, I think. And then I think live coding might have another wave in response to the current hype cycle, where we want to get back to human-centric computing. So yeah. But yeah, there's lots of things we could talk about that time, about the venues. There's very special venues, spaces, I think, for things to happen are really important. As Sarah says, I think the development of culture is just as important as the work or the technology. It's all part of the same thing. And when people open up their spaces for experimentation, then that can really have very far-reaching consequences, I think. And so big shout out to all the people opening experimental spaces like Shelly in Newcastle. Yeah, I think I've talked enough. But
yeah, the thing with a generative art thing, I remember that when we gave our talk in Sheffield, and about the meaning of life, the first meaning of life version, that was really a strong motivation, that this whole idea of self-organization, everything evolves like life from itself, and to counterpose that with rules, like the love for like affirmation of kind of clearly rule-based stuff. I think that's something that's this past post AI feeling that rules are something interesting and not something that one tries to get rid of by like emulating live or data or existing things by a lot of collection of a lot of data.
yeah, I guess. Oh, sorry, Renata.
Oh, maybe also like it was more demystifying to that people could see what's happening, and with generative art you have this like really not like unpleasant feeling of there's this big fuss, and it's this big secret, which is maybe more in a way more easy for like as a more male thing, because you can say, well, it looks wonderful, but you're all not gonna understand what's about. But so I thought this is a nice idea to understand what people are doing, and the music which was there was so different. Like it was not a particular style. It was like some I could enjoy a lot. Others was just like, okay, that's also something you can do. So it was more around this understanding and yeah, like I remember there was a meeting in New York. When was that? There was this bar where everybody could go, and that is before live coding.
2001. That was already. We had live coding techniques there in the.
Well, yeah,
but it was before the live coding movement.
It was more that like not coming to that bar to listen to someone playing, but to have an exchange and to talk about who's developing what, and I think that is like very strong. That was very strong, I think, for
But it's kind of hack lab thing in a sense, right?
Yeah, I think an interesting thing about that time was that there was a lot of experimentation, and people tended to come with quite a different system for every performance. You might have a completely new bit of software, or changed it quite considerably. So it all felt, a lot of people were using their own system, like the majority of people. And that meant things changed a lot, but it meant that there was, I guess we were searching around for possibilities, in particular, how to make music for me, how to make improvised music in particular. And it wasn't clear that it was possible for me at the start, but felt that we were trying anyway because the idea was so interesting. And so, yeah, sometimes the music wasn't great, but there was a real focus on just trying things, trying something new. But yeah, but now it feels like there's a lot of people using existing software, and then it's much more about community growing around it and really focusing on making music or making visuals. Although more recently, I think there has been a real surge of new systems. Sarah, as someone who kind of performs with their own system and is a bit newer to the scene, you have been performing for a long time, really, by any measure. But do you think that that's important to your practice?
Yeah, totally. I am always, it's interesting because listening to you talk, I was thinking a little bit about the difference between sort of learning a tool to do the performance and building the tool itself. And like, a lot of it was even thinking about how I wanted people to understand what was going on, like the terms that I use in the framework, the way the framework is written is meant to be read so that even if somebody doesn't know a lot about code, and even the choice of closure script, all of that is like a huge part of the work itself. Like perhaps the performance is like the tip of the iceberg, and it's the important part because it's where a lot of intentions are like manifested. But those intentions, I think at least, have to be there. And so being able to create the system and take part in the demystification feels like the entire process to me. Although I guess I would say that, like, I would hate for that to be the bar for people. Like, I want people to want to get there. Like the idea that somebody starts with a tool that maybe they didn't make, and then they're like, well, now I'm going to make the thing for me, I think is like the full live code experience, not just the performance part. So, yeah.
That's a great, that's a gregreat point. And brief pause here to welcome Amy, who's just joined us. Amy, we've been talking about some of the early days, but we've kind of shifted into talking about platforms and focus on making music and the surge of new systems But do you want to just, since everyone else did a brief introduction, do you want to just do your introduction and what your involvement with TOPLAP has been?
Oh, yeah. So hi everybody. Yeah, I'm Amy Alexandra. I think of myself as like a tangential live coder. I don't do that much like live coding in the usual sense, but I have done live things with keyboards and liveness for a very long time. So I was kind of around in the 20 years ago, whatever that was we were doing, and we were going to those conferences and talking about liveness and performance in computers back when computers were like beige boxes, and now they're cool neon things that people play games on and stream, which is kind of crazy. So I've been, very interested in the evolution, and I've I've worked with most of you, Alex and Shelly and Julian and Renata, and yeah. So yeah, hi.
Great, thanks. So we were talking about platforms and what it means to how you tie that into your performances. Alexandra had a question about. I mean, this kind of ties us back to how things evolved in the early days. And Alexandra, you want to talk about the sharing your screens?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Alex and Julian and Renate how was it? I find this idea of showing the screen is such a breakthrough, like for arts, like in general, like coming from traditional art schools where showing your errors and showing your process is something that is not encouraged. For me, this is one of the things that really made me fall in love with the practice, is that I was showing who I am, and I felt the possibility of being very authentic in this way, showing the errors and showing my skills or lack of the skills or whatever, like being myself. And I feel this is so important, and it has changed so many things. I would like to know how was it? What was the conversation when you said, "Okay, let's show the screens"? I'm so curious.
Yeah, I'd like to first turn that question back on you a little bit, if that's okay. Because I know that you kind of started live coding when you were in Mexico, is that right? And sort of experienced and were part of and supported the growth of that scene. And you picked up on certain ideas of what live coding was, and it seemed really amplified them, put them in quite often a more political context. So I suppose I'm interested in how you actually picked up on this idea of sharing your screens and the kind of and the focus on improvisation and this sort of thing. Could you just say a little bit about that, Alex?
Yeah, well, for me, it meant the world, like it meant freedom from the shackles of the scores. I was a classical guitarist, so it was like I was trained to not make errors, and that was very constrictive. And I wanted, like, discovering that I could show the screens, and that it was fine that I had errors shown in the screen, and that it was, no one was frowning on me, like, or oh my god, look at what she did. But all the opposite. It was like, yeah, well, you're missing a comma, like this. My first performance in Europe, where I was silent for like 9 minutes or something, and then David Upburn yelled from the audience, "Alex, you're missing a comma." Ah, thank you. And then I had like the remaining minutes of my piece, and then I felt very bad about it. And when I finished the piece, Nick Collins came after the concert. This was in the Live Code Festival in Karlsruhe. And Nick Collins told me, "Well, congratulations on your piece." And I was thinking he was making fun of me. But then he said, "Yeah, your first minutes were silent, and that's very good." And that comment was super freeing, and it was like, okay, everybody could see what I made and could see the error. They actually help me advance. And the whole piece includes the errors and the impossibilities and the possibilities. So for me, this is but it's the fact that you are showing the screen that for me is so liberating and so stimulating. And I think this is gonna bring so many changes in terms of aesthetics and also authenticity in art. So for me, it is even if I don't improvise fully all the time, I keep improvising all the time, and I do make mistakes regularly. But I compose my pieces, and still I have interaction with the people who are there. Like when I'm playing in the club here in Berlin, a lot of people know programming in Berlin. So I love this feeling of seeing the people dancing in the club and then looking at the code and wow, look at she unsolved this, and wow, see the faces being illuminated with the joy of understanding the process, that they are enjoying this and it's not a mystery, it's not a secret. So it means so much to me.
Oh, it's really great to hear, and I remember being in the audience for that performance in Karlsruhe, and I can tell you everyone was totally with you. Really were rooting for you to fix that problem. I don't understand.
Such a great moment. I still remember it. It was so good. Everyone was like, oh no.
And then the actual performance was really wonderful. I remember these kind of interference patterns, and it was authentic. From my perspective, I think it wasn't so clear, and things never are. I think there were projectors then, and so we used them. And I remember Adrian Ward was very clear that we should share just what was on our desktop, not kind of dress it up in any way, just honestly share what we're doing. But then we thought, well, maybe that's distracting. Maybe seeing the code kind of distracts from the purity of the musical experience. And so we used to obscure the screen. We used to have two projectors overlaid so you could see the movement, but then not read it and this kind of thing. And I only personally came around to the idea of showing your screens when a deaf artist, Annie, came up to me after the performance and said that he felt he could access it by reading the screen, and then when I turned a strobe on, he couldn't read the code anymore and he couldn't access the music anymore. Then I realized that there was, that's such a clear argument for showing your screen, and I've always shared it properly ever since. But I kind of wanted to ask you that because I think these ideas bring on their own life, and when it comes to Mexico, you think, oh yes, there's this idea from Europe, but in Europe, I think it wasn't that clear, and I think it had its own life in Mexico, and I think actually Mexico City was the first kind of strong local live coding community there was. So that's where, although we were kind of dotted around Europe, there wasn't the kind of regular meetups that you had in Mexico City. So I think that's when these ideas really kind of had their own sort of community resonance. It's easy to look on these things as linear and coming from a source, but I think it's much more.
Alex or Julian, anyone, can you tie this idea of sharing your screen back to the manifesto draft? When I hear share the screens, I always think manifesto. But can you talk, or can someone talk a little bit about that?
I think the manifesto is a bit of a mess. Kind of just lots of people just writing stuff into a wiki, having sort of parallel discussions on the mailing list. I think the mailing list discussion that went around it is more interesting than the manifesto, which is quite unclear. And I don't agree with a lot of it. So I haven't got too much to say about the manifesto, apart from it says draft manifesto, so you're supposed to be able to edit it.
I mean, I think the manifesto kind of always tongue in cheek, right? Like this is a manifesto because none of us agree, and there is no manifesto. Like it's ironic. We all are very, everybody is very sure, and of course, no one is sure.
Yeah, a lot of things were ironic, right? live coding itself as a term is maybe also a little bit ironic. Certainly just-in-time programming was completely ironic. It was about this kind of industries, just-in-time delivery industry, and like always being too late. And there was the early watch, relax, and program performances, which were not necessarily live coding in clubs or anything, but it was like showing screen and, let's just look at code, just relax and look at the code and how it evolves. And if you want to change something, do it. It was also ironic because there was a TV series in Bavarian TV that was called ZEN, Zuschauen, Entspannen, Nachdenken, which was like Zen, but watch, relax, and program. We called it watch, relax, and program. Of course, that was watch, relax, and think. So yeah, that was, I think, when we used the screen first, 2001 or so, in public. But it was not in clubs or anything. Right? And displacing it into clubs was also very important social displacement, because it was so provocative. Oh, such a high level thing, suddenly in this low level club. So this is this punk emancipation feeling behind it. I think that's really important.
Remember?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I remember it always being like very controversial at conferences, because we would get to every conference and people would say, well, we can't read your code, don't you? I mean, why are you showing us this code we can't read? And it was like this joke, like, what will we say when they ask that question this time? There was a lot of controversy about whether something should be shown that the audience can only understand in some general sense and not actually understand the coding itself. And the idea that we just wanted to show this general process of thoughts, like the scattered thoughts in my head right now are coming at me, and we wanted to show that process in the thing, seemed to be very radical, although I don't think it was radical to us.
Yeah, right. It's against this consumer attitude that everybody is shown, everybody should immediately understand, right? Everything should be completely clear. And if you don't make yourself clear, you're not a good person, essentially.
But I can't count the number of times, though, that people have told me that after seeing the code, they're not programmers, but after seeing the code, they felt inspired to begin coding. Because maybe for many people, it's the first time that they actually seriously considered what computer code meant. And as a result of seeing code on the screen, then they felt, oh, actually, I could I could get some kind of connection to what was going on. I feel I understood something. I feel inspired to try to learn that myself. So I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the best responses to, I've had programmers be quite angry in the early days about the idea there'd be code on the screen, but non-programmers always very interested, and they're also being introduced to the meaning of code in a sort of format which is very different from the normal meaning of code. So I think that's interesting as we spread ideas. It's quite a political gesture then to share your code and say this is what it is for, when this is not usually what code is for. So that's a nice point.
One of the ways that this tradition has evolved is that, particularly in the live streaming events, which has been a huge part of what TOPLAP has been, sponsoring these events periodically over the last number of years. But one of the ways that showing your screens has evolved is that it's no longer just code. It's it's Hydra or visuals. Almost sometimes it can be a little distracting if you really want to see the code and there's all these things happening on the screen. But oftentimes it's also this virtuoso performance where somebody is not only coding their doing their audio, but doing some visuals at the same time. So I think the tradition has really evolved to become something which is quite diverse and very individualistic. You know, some people who perform from scratch will often give, you know, very large, you know, font size, so you can really just see everything that's going on in their code. And other people have lots of prepared code and things going on, but I think it really does reflect. It's come to be something which is very specific to the individual and what kind of tradition they're working in.
So something that also makes me think of, that I don't know that we've totally talked about a lot, is the collaboration between audio and visual performers as the performances start evolving into that. Because I think something that's very interesting is then it gives you this like comparison to another kind of collaboration in the exact same place. That like when Cody plays, when I play with Kate, we specifically, you know, don't do like audio reactivity. It's very much that like that I am audio reactive. And so you have almost this like triangle of collaborations between people and machines, and then two people together and via the machines itself. And I think that's another really interesting sort of flourishing or version of live code, is that when you start comparing all the kinds of collaboration.
Yeah, including the collaboration where people are editing the same code, so the code becomes sort of communication medium between people as well, and takes on a whole level of interaction through network music. And I suppose, yeah, through PowerBooks Unplugged and other things, there has been this kind of interconnection between the idea of live coding and network music. I think, Shelly, that's been something you've been involved with. I don't know if you want to talk about the history of network music as you've been involved with and how it interacts.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know where to start with the history of network music. But yeah, I wanted to say at the start, but I was, yeah, totally fluffing what I said there. My first experience of live coding was at the Super Collider Symposium in 2007, and it was a performance with Julian and Alberto's Republic system. So it was like a networked performance where people were like sharing code over the network and editing the code and collaborating in this way. And like the sound was also like distributed through across the laptops as well. And yeah, actually back then I wasn't really doing any network music, but later I was part of a band called Bile, who weren't at that point live coding, but we were building systems in SuperGlider to perform together. And then that evolved into the Network Music Festival, which was a really great event. I mean, I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet, but it was a really nice event where lots of international people involved in network music came together, and it was a really great community of practice. And yeah, there was a lot of live coding going on in that space. And I think we actually organized the second Algorave was at the Network Music Festival as well. And I guess, yeah, there was sort of like this idea that like, I mean, SuperGlider in itself is sort of like inherently networked, and there's a lot of like possibility there in terms of ways to sort of share and interact together through code. And yeah, more recently, I've been involved in a band called Supercontinent, which is like an international group that works with David Ogborn's estuary software. So that's like an online interface where everyone can code together online. And that's been like really interesting in terms of like sort of like seeing the kinds of like practices and like shared learning that come out of that, because everybody's coding in the same space. I guess it kind of encourages you to sort of like try to understand other people's coding, or like even like take stuff that they're doing and then edit it and understand through that way. yeah, and in a way that you can't necessarily understand what they're doing in sort of like non-live coding network performances that I find really interesting, because you can kind of like pick apart like what they're using to make sound with, and sort of like dive into their practice and understand it that way, and then sort of like twist that and make it into your own thing. So yeah, I guess what somebody was saying about this sort of like the code as communication is like really like pertinent in that space of like collaboration and like learning and developing together. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone want to jump in? I would love to hear Julian talking about the Republic.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about like learning and performing, I mean, I think in a lot of music cultures, it's not so separate, right? I mean, it's very normal that people just learn while they play. I remember in Mexico City, I was invited to this fandango party where people like played guitars like all over a courtyard, and basically, if you couldn't play much, you could just tune in and play with very, very little knowledge. And this kind of that's kind of a normal way to make music in a non-division of labor way, right? Where people just have to learn while they play. There's no other way, because there's no time. They have other professions, right? They can't practice all day and then play in the night, but they have to work, and so then everybody learns while they do it. And this is kind of a nice continuum between trying to understand, between teaching and learning. And in terms of Republic, yeah, I mean, one of the early like communal moments for us was this workshop that we did with Alberto together, and basically the people who were then PowerBooks Unplugged later, which started off as a workshop, which was this paper. There's this paper about weighting in algorithmic music, and it was this trying out this network thing, and it's very strange because everybody is suddenly involved. You cannot, like, someone else can play on your computer, so it's very unclear who does what. So you kind of you can't. You're both triggered that, oh, you're doing things automatically without actually doing things, and you also know that what you are doing, maybe others don't know what you're doing, right? Who is it? So of course, all the time people ask, who's doing that, right? And so it's all this kind of distributed agency that's already there in the beginning, before any competence level is set, right? Before you know, okay, this is the person who knows this, and this is the person who knows that. Then you know who's doing what, like, you know, playing one instrument, playing another instrument. But when nobody really knows who knows what and who's playing what, then competence is also very fluid in a way, right? And that's a very, very nice way to learn, I find. I mean, also, like, you know, at every level, I also want to learn stuff, right? Even if I teach, I want to learn.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoy that kind of like entanglement as well, that like sometimes when you're participating in these systems, you don't even know what you're doing because like there's so much like sort of like very similar things going on that you're not entirely sure like which one of them is the one that you're doing. Yeah, recently with the coding group in Newcastle, we've been jamming sort of bi-weekly with Flock, and it's been really nice, like mostly in Strudel, a little bit in Hydra, but it's been really nice in that space with people who are like really new to live coding, to have that space to like essentially share together. And like, yeah, like Julian said, I'm also like learning things from them, which is really nice. Yeah, it feels like a very like sort of flat exchange, which is, yeah, I guess you don't get with other kinds of sort of modes of learning so much.
I remember in the early days, Amy, you kind of were early proponent of having kind of, as well as kind of glorying the typing interface itself, for example, doing a performance that was just typing at Transmedia. also a proponent of exploring other kinds of interfaces, as your close friend and colleague Ubergeek, who you never saw two of you in the same place at once. And,
yes. Yeah, I was a proponent of physicality, because I think one of the things that a lot of us were thinking about at the time was this kind of presumed passivity of using the computer, and that you were kind of sitting there doing the same thing that you would do at work, like a, kind of a culturally obedient zombie type. And so kind of thinking about that, and thinking about that becoming an active activity, and what is the relationship between typing and things that are more associated with music, like playing a guitar and playing drums and all of these things. And so Ubergeek, in various forms, played the keyboard as a percussion instrument, and so that was something that was in my own performances. Typing was very active. Oh, it's me. And as well as I had an air mouse that you could wave around and do the graphics, and a Dance Dance Revolution pad, which eventually also became an actual live coding interface. I called it a FFOC, which is a recursive acronym, which stands for FFOC is foot operated software. So like the FFOC could pull up little scraps of code and actually live code with my feet. And so if you know me in real life, I'm very awkward. So everything was kind of designed around my awkward dancing. But it was a lot of fun. But the idea of how much physicality can we bring into this practice of digital performance that, particularly back in the early 2000s, always seemed very kind of, I think it was presumed to be passive. And I think sort of like live coding is kind of bringing the mental activity of composition to the foreground. I was kind of trying to play with that same idea of just the activity of the performer and composer.
Yeah, just
oh my gosh, thingy chat cheat sheet.
Yeah.
Wow.
I must have taken a sneaky.
Can I get these pictures? I don't have these. These are lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, this is on Flickr.
Oh wow, I'll have to get these from you. Yeah, the thingy. I think the thingy is the same as I don't even remember. I think it's the same as the FFOC. The FFOC is foot up. I think it's also the thingy.
Cool. Sorry.
Panic. Yes, panic. It was.
Yeah, sorry. Hi, Harmonix. I seem to be asking questions when you've got nice themes that we should return to. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. It can be pretty freewheeling, but I do want to segue into the theme of community, it seems to me that community has come to be a really important part of live coding, and certainly important part of TOPLAP, and that there are all these TOPLAP communities which have evolved. Some of them in local places, and some of you here, and of course lots of other people have put in a lot of effort to build and nurture and foster those communities. But some of them are virtual, and or just a live stream community that that kind of seems to coalesce around these events which we organize. So I'd like to have some discussion there. I want to start with just a video, because I really like it. It's something that the TOPLAP Karlsruhe in Germany put together for the ICLC last year, and they pulled all these things out from their archive. So it's pretty interesting to see just the history the last 10 or 15 years of what their group has done, and then we can kind of talk and another one I want to show. There's some videos. There's some events. Another community is the Live Codera, and I know that Alexandra and Shelly and maybe others of you have been involved with that, and that's another type of community which seems to have had some built some strong ties. But let me bring this video up here.
This is not just a deck of cards. This is a collection of 54 beautiful...
So it kind of jumps around a lot, but I like that little series of clips because it shows a really wide range of live coding types of environments, and some of it very experimental in nature, some of it more algorave and dance music, some of it very innovative and people trying different kinds of devices, and it kind of just and even I just happened to notice now that they were featuring I think. Quite a number of you were showed up for a few of these. I saw Alex and Shelly and Renata and Alexandra. Some of your performances just got captured in those clips, and it just there are quite a number of. One of the reasons I wanted to point this out was just kind of in celebrating what TOPLAP has done is that it's I think fostered these local communities which have been very done a lot to help develop people individually and so forth. So anybody want to jump in and comment or talk further about community?
Well, I think the community is like the backbone of the whole thing. It's so important. It's the root, but it's also like the wings and everything that is so relevant is that we are sharing, we're thinking together, creating together, growing up together. No. And this is so different from other artistic traditions, academic, or that are based in this individualistic and thought, and that also is sadly based in egoistic snobism and trying to keep things for one person only and gain more recognition for myself. Instead, here is that's also one of the things that freed me so much about live coding, is that it freed me from this stress of trying to be better, to show up that I have worth, instead, this word came naturally supported by the community. It's like the community actually helped me realize my worth, which is so the opposite of my experiences in other kind of communities and academia and stuff. So I think that's why it's so relevant, and so it touches so many levels, the lives of people, to enter in community. And it doesn't mean necessarily that it's wonderful always, because we're humans, and in the end we are facing all the shadow and negative parts of other humans, as in any community. But the community of life coding has a way to keep all these things it's like errors, no? Our errors are humans are also included here and valued, and we all learn from those errors. So it's not trying to show a fake facade free of errors, but it's actually like, hey, in community we're growing. Remember when you did that? Actually, it was a good thing. We all learned from that, you know. So I think the community, and otherwise it has evolved and taken shape. The beauty of how we were already doing so many things virtually and in networking before the pandemic, and to see how actually those seeds we were planting back then during the pandemic was so helpful for so many people. First, myself, I was in bed, depressed, and having the possibility to have algo raves and concerts of live coding online was what helped me get out of the depression, no? During the COVID times. And we were creating these virtual reality concerts and algo raves in imaginary landscapes. And it was so good because we were feeling like, hey, we're together now in a yacht. So cool. Nice to see you. You're in Mexico, you're in Greece, you're in the net, but we are here in this intergalactic yacht right now, and we are making an algo rave. And so that was very beautiful. And now to see that we are kind of hybridizing, going back to the physical, but also completing it with all these wonderful tools of connecting in network. And I'm super. I was nervous for a while that. Oh my God, what is going to be now? The live coding community, people are not respectful. But then it was like, come on, it's about letting go, because the seeds are really well planted, and they are growing in very fertile soil. So not everything is under control of anyone. We just are here to support and to bring some water when we can, and to take care of the garden a little bit when we can. But the garden is really strong, and yeah, well, maybe there are some people who don't act in the most beautiful ways all the time, and that's also part of the thing. So I see the community evolving amazingly. Also, for instance, here in Berlin, there is TOPLAP Berlin, but there are also different communities growing around it, because it's such a big city, and not everybody can go to the other place of the city. So it's beautiful. Berlin has so many communities now. Yeah, I can talk for hours. Sorry, but that's for now.
I have a question. I have a question, like for any of you. In a way, I think, like, I mean, live coding lives with changing rules while they're active, right? So, but there are so many social rules we follow, and so many habits we follow as kind of implicit social rules. Do you feel that live coding has changed an attitude towards kind of other areas of life for you, like with regards to these rules, or the way we improvise with rules, or anything like that, or is there talk around that?
Was the question for me, Julian?
If you like, yes.
Then I didn't understand very well, because I couldn't hear very well. If the rules, you mean the rules, like our rules as community?
I meant like rules in everyday life, including habits and including like explicit rules, like in communities, like in larger, where you have to organize stuff, you have to have rules, right? Whether live coding has inspired a different way of dealing with these rules and with these habits.
I mean, for me personally, live coding has really informed my life and my philosophy of acting. Like, the first days being around Alex McClean when I just arrived in Europe, and see that you can be a gentle organizer and a kind person who supports each other, even if you are super bright. And usually people who are so bright are not so kind and are so gentle. In my experience, it was like that. So for me, it was such a relief. And then I was learning from his example, and I realized how beautiful it is organizing without managing the stress well, and the best you can, and being gentle, and being like compassionate about the errors of other people. And definitely all this has traduced in a very important way in my life, in the way I relate to every person, in the way I relate to myself. Like, I have become so much more gentle. And it's like also it's good to have rules and to have basic philosophies, but also it's good to be flexible and realize, okay, this was a good rule when I was 25 years old, but now that I'm 40 something, 48, it's like I have other rules and I need to take care of myself. A lot of self-care has come from the practice, a lot of self-care. So I think it has been very important in my life in all levels, what I have learned from the community.
I think I would say for me it was the opposite almost, that like the strictness of rules are important, I think, to have this sort of like openness and inclusivity that's really sort of important, that like transparency requires, at least especially like a sort of leaderless transparency. And a lot of this comes from that I was involved with the Live Code NYC community from pretty early on, and different places I think have different venue possibilities and different kinds of shows and stuff. And one of the things in New York is that like getting a venue was not usually the hard part, because you could get a bar that would let you play at like 7:00 on a Wednesday, and they didn't care because they were like, great, come, your friends buy drinks. But because we were playing a lot, it was really important to make sure that it didn't turn into the same people playing all the time, even though people needed to organize, and having like a sort of group of people who knew how to organize shows was important. So we like went as far as making rules about like how bills were broken down, right? That like there needed to always be a spot on the bill for a new person, because we wanted people to come, and it's not enough to just invite people, like you have to be able to put them out there, right? And so we found that by having strict rules, we were able to be flexible about who organized stuff and still like live up to our principles, or be flexible about the other things by saying like, this is who goes on the bill at a show, this is how you decide if you can't decide between these two people. And I think that even as Live Code NYC has evolved now, and there are more shows that aren't open calls that specific people are running, I still think there's like a very strong core in that group of the idea that it should be really inclusive, and you should sort of always be thinking about that. So that's a case where I think it was like, it's like the combination of code and people. The code is strict because you just write the thing down and there's the algorithm to decide who's on it. And then it means you can be so inclusive and flexible in the other part of it.
Yeah, I would say it's been huge for me, because I think the ethos of live coding makes explicit a lot of things that should be stated about art and programming and who belongs in it. You know, I'm a professor of computing and the arts, and so there's a lot of people that come into it and think, well, coding, that's something that I can't do because I'm an artist, or I'm a woman, or whatever it is that they've been told, and I'm not perfect enough to do this. And live coding, I think the community really makes explicit that, okay, this is very inclusive. It's not just a bunch of white guys and they all do it, nobody seems to know how to get in. It's not just a bunch of perfect people. People fail all the time, and they live, and it's part of it. And I think when people see that, I kind of talk about that with my students. Yeah, okay. It's, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be a person that has been programming since I was in diapers. I can, this is something that I can do. So I think it's huge just in the way people, both in how artists relate technology, but just how people relate to technology and realize that it's not this thing that they have to be so disempowered by. So I think just like the way the ethos makes all of that explicit is huge.
Oh, go on, Shelly.
Yeah, I guess I would just echo like some of what Amy said, that I mean, I used to work in academia, but now I don't. And actually for me, like as somebody who was like working in academia and really struggling with like all of the like hierarchies and like toxic cultures within that system, like just being part of the like live coding community was like such a great counterpoint to me, because like I felt like the community was like actively like working to like fight against those kind of structures and hierarchies in the way that it was operating. So like I guess being able to sort of like be part of that community alongside something that was like quite destructive was like super helpful in my life. And yeah, and I guess just coming back to like Julian's question in terms of like how like live coding has like impacted like how you operate in the world. Like I guess I sort of share with Alexandra that I come from like quite a like classical music background, and like it's very much about like perfection and like being able to like break down those values and I guess like explore like failure and explore like getting up on stage and everything not having to be perfect, and like and then being able to like share that with other people who are like coming into the community and sort of like like advocating for that as like a really important value in a community is like, yeah, I guess like one of the things that's been like really that I've really like internalized as like a way of being. Alex, you're muted.
Sorry, my mouse button doesn't work very well. Yeah, I guess a wider question could be, does the actual mechanism of being able to change rules while you're making music or visuals or dance, whatever, does that change your life when you go to the shop and buy something, or when you engage in politics or local civic society? I don't know, really. I think when I collaborate with a non-live coder or someone who doesn't have any background in improvisation, I do notice. I think then it becomes apparent that I do have a particular way of working, which I think does come from live coding, like collaborating on a presentation recently with a friend. They were sort of scripting what they were going to say, and I was just kind of marking out points which I wanted to visit. And whether, I guess the question has always been, does live coding have a political resonance? Like, can you say live coding is showing us that history hasn't ended? We can actually change the rules of working, even though it seems sometimes that we have this very linear trajectory into climate chaos and things because of the way society works. Live coding shows that things could change. I don't think we're actually making that change through live coding yet, but maybe it at least inspires that there is a possibility of change. I don't know if that is based on any, I don't know if it's just like a nice thought or whether there could be something there. I don't know. It sounds a bit overblown to say it, but yeah, I guess that's always been kind of undercurrent, political undercurrent.
I want to add. Sorry, go ahead.
Just a little question, because I think, I mean, then live coding also is really, for me, it's really connected to the open source idea of open source software. So I mean, I think that it's yeah, so it's within that, which might be yes, like as a way of approaching things politically.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's more than how it has changed things. I think it's aspirational if we can show people the nature of programming and how code works. I'm feeling increasingly annoyed about talks about conscious machines because I think that's just not what's happening with AI at the moment. And so many people are getting lost in that kind of what I think is really erroneous story. And so I always take part of my performance to chat with the audience about forcing programmers and managers and designers to be responsible for the programs and not to pawn off their responsibility on some machines that they claim that are conscious. So I think that should be our aspiration to show audiences through showing our screens and our practice and open source software that's not the case about what's going on in the world. And it's time that we hold the programmers and the designers responsible.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe this kind of positive feeling that, well, yeah, rules and habits are kind of strict, but one can kind of play around with them, but then it breaks. One has these glitches, or in everyday life, you try to open the trash can a little bit differently or put the forks on the table a little bit differently, and then something happens that is not intended, it's not good, or whatever, and enjoying that slapstick moment can help, I think, to change things and change habits and make a utopia where things can be like maybe poorer in a certain way, but richer in another. Right?
Yeah, for me, I think it's so inspiring, the practice when I perform. That's my main goal, is to be inspiring, so that people know that I am a musician, that I am programming, for instance, is very important, so that everybody knows that everybody can come and program and make use of digital technology in a way that is not dictated by in the industries or conglomerates or whatever. So that's why open source is the center of all this, and I think it's very valuable that this superpower of open source, I think it is really expressed through my arts in everything I do. This message goes, even if I don't mention the words, because the hacker philosophy is there behind, and I think this is a superpower for humans in the future. And if we can appropriate these technologies and feel that we have a part in them, and we can create them, and we can decide what to do with them, I think that's a main message of live coding, and that's super political.
Yeah, I think what Rennick said was really important, because live coding shows that, yeah, there's humans behind all of the algorithms, and sometimes things don't work correctly. And that's the same with the algorithms that are, controlling us socially, machine learning algorithms and banking algorithms, judicial algorithms. They're all being floated out there, oftentimes without the accountability they should have. And as Rennick pointed out, there's this kind of like, oh, well, the machine did that, we trust the machine. But there's there's a lot of people studying this and concerned about this, that there's not the accountability and the transparency. And so, of course, intuitively in live coding, that's part of it. And so I think there's a lot of potential there for kind of bringing that awareness. It's like the old movie, Soylent Green is people. All of these algorithms are people. And so I think there's a lot of potential for helping just raise that awareness in general. All of this is just the intellectual work of people behind it.
And I think I would add to that also, like, shifting the, like, I guess, like, algorithm is like quite a new word to like a lot of people. But when people have like sort of come across that word in recent years, it's like something that's done to them. Like, it's like this algorithm is like taking your data, or it's like changing your life in some way that you don't want or something. So like, I guess like shifting the perception to something where like an algorithm is something that you can have like an active relationship with, and it can be like positive, and it can also be about coming together and dancing as well as like your data being harvested. I think is like super powerful.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of Ursula Franklin talking about technologies of control versus technologies of work. With the example of the sewing machine, for example, is something which is really marketed very heavily as a technology of work that would save people, particularly women, time so that they'd be able to live more lives of leisure. But then very quickly they become technologies of control, and we end up with sweatshops. And we don't, clothes get shipped from one country to the next instead of made locally and so on. And that's clearly the case with the internet and with the idea of the algorithm. AI is sold as something that helps us work, but clearly it's much more a technology of control that's just going to be used by billionaires to control people and take control of their words and sort of strip them of authorship and sell them back to us and so on. I'm always going on about Ursula Franklin, but I really recommend her lectures on the real world of technology. But yeah, you basically just said it anyway, Shelly. So.
One of the things I wanted to touch on, we were talking about community too, and what that does, and how that influences us. And there's also been a community, the Live Codera community, and I was just wondering if any of you who are involved with this could talk a little bit about what that's meant and what that how that's evolved.
I can, unless you want to jump in, Alexandra.
Okay, I can start.
Sorry?
I can start, and then you can, yeah. So we were thinking with Shelly for like in 2020 during the pandemic, we were thinking we should get together to do something for the 8th of March, and it's not that I always felt very supported in the live coding community. I didn't realize how feminist it was until I didn't realize how not feminist I was before the live coding community. And it was thanks to the live coding community that I started realizing, thanks to talking to Shelly, thanks to comparing like the outside world with the live coding community. And but why do I feel so well and so seen here? And why I'm not feeling that well in other parts? And then, I started putting things together and realizing, it is a feminist community. But here terms are a big problem, and some people don't like. They feel offended when they talk about feminism or that. So what I'm saying is like the most basic feminist description that a feminist is a person who believes that a woman has the same is worthy of having the same rights as a man. And many types of feminisms have come about, but in the LiveCon community, I felt it was a very healthy intersectional feminism that allowed many kinds of feminisms to coexist. And now in the last years, it has expanded so much to not only women, but obviously all other genders and identifications. And that has been very beautiful for me to watch, that this idea, Shelly and I started like, let's have an 8M celebration online. Let's do a streaming. Let's do it our way. Let's show what non-male live coders are making. And now it has grown so much. We are around, I guess, 80 something non-male identifying live coders from around the world, and we have channels where we share. And now we're programming our next 8M, and it's growing very beautiful. What do you think, Shelly?
Yeah, I guess I'm like this, like I'm really happy that Live Code Era exists now, because yeah, like Alex, I think like yeah, I mean, when I started live coding back in 2012, there wasn't that many women around. I know, like, obviously there's Renata and Amy who were like very fundamental in the beginnings of the live coding community, but in terms of sort of the UK culture, at the time, at that particular time, there weren't very many women. And so the sort of few women that were part of the community put a lot of work into like sort of developing the diversity, and yeah, not just in the UK or in Europe, but also in Mexico and South America as well. So yeah, I guess I'm super happy at like where we're at right now, and it feels like really powerful to like be able to have this like amazing group of like super talented women who we basically, yeah, we do events on the 8th of March, and but we also have this Telegram group, which is like very much like a solidarity and support group, and people like share links to what they're doing and stuff. And yeah, I think like all of us as women have probably at least at some point like experienced as women who do work with code, some level of like discrimination or disbelief or whatever. So being able to know you're in a group of people who like understand how that feels and what that is, I think is like super important. And especially like when it came, when this group started was, I guess, was it 2 years ago, Alex, or 3? I can't remember. I think maybe 3 years ago, but it, yeah, okay. But it was still sort of like,
we had the idea 3 years ago, but it took us 1 more year to put things together.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess it was sort of like in the pandemic where it was a bit harder for us to connect in person, and people like Alexandra, who I would see at gigs every now and again, I kind of hadn't seen in a long time. And so sort of having this like online space where we could sort of share and talk about what we were up to was like super like what's the word, like was like feeding the soul in during that time. Yeah, I would love to hear Amy or Renata actually like talking a bit about their experiences from the early live coding scene, or I mean, no pressure, but yeah, how you've seen it changed for, would be interesting to. Maybe I put you on the spot a bit too much there. It's fine.
in terms of how it has changed in terms of gender, or just
yeah.
Oh, good question. Yeah, I don't remember it ever being not welcoming. I'll say that, because it always had this whimsy and this, it was never one of these spaces that was like, okay, we know how to do everything right, and we're the guys, and this is it. It was always welcoming, but I think over the years it's become something that it became explicitly welcoming. Like it became conscious of like, oh, okay, there's these there's these social phenomenon that keep discouraging women, and discouraging people from different parts of the world, and how do we deal with this? And it became explicit, and I think that really helped make it more inclusive, because by default I think a lot of people just feel like, oh, for some reason I'm not good enough to be there. So I think making it explicit and inclusive in all ways really was important. And again, not I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I feel like I'm a woman, therefore I'm not good enough. There's just like two intersecting things. One is I'm good enough, but I'm a woman, so I'm gonna get, am I allowed to say the S word here? I'm gonna get shit. Or there's there's I don't know, you know, I've always felt I wasn't good enough, right? So there's the two things, and so really, I think making things explicitly inclusive has been very big, but it always did feel inclusive to me even before that.
Yeah, I guess on a sort of like a shorter time scale, maybe I've experienced that kind of shift as well, because like when I did start live coding, because there weren't really many women around, like it was definitely like a feeling I had, and probably I didn't start live coding for like 3 years when I might have started like earlier, because I was kind of around the scene and like seeing performances and stuff, because I felt like I'm not a good enough programmer to do that. And like, because I'm like female and like people judge women's code, like everyone's going to see that my code is rubbish. And so like, I'm not going to do that. So yeah, definitely. I think when I did start live coding, it was definitely like very present to me that there might be other women who felt the same and were like similarly like tentative about engaging in this practice because of that sort of like barrier of like, oh, everyone's going to judge my code. So.
It's particularly heartening to hear from you all that your perceptions that the live coding environment has been welcoming and has only grown more so. I particularly don't want to be in a place that's very male dominated, and really enjoy the different perspectives and really want to be a place where everybody feels they can flourish. And so I think it's just really important to preserve that part, and preserve and protect all of that in this community.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of play the moderator role here and kind of point out we've got just about 15 minutes left. I wanted to have some time to actually play some music. I have a pet peeve of going to online things about music and about sound or about live coding, and then you don't have it. So I've got a couple examples. Of course, I could have asked you all to do some live coding right on the spot, but we're not gonna do that. We could have, but anyway. I've got some videos that I want to play just from the archives, and just to remind everyone that there's I put together this list, and it's pretty awesome. I mean, every time I open one of these playlists up and just start clicking around, I almost always find something that just goes, wow. It's just, and each time we have one of the, I mean, we're about to kick off this event, which is part of what this whole TOPLAP 20 is about, is a 36-hour live stream, which are just fantastic to me. There's just so much diversity and so much people around the world, and everything. It's kind of what draws me to it, is these type of events. But anyway, we've got all these archives, and Scott Fradkin does a great job of archiving these, and it uses the Muxi program, which Moonshaker built and maintains, and it does an awesome job, and a lot of just stuff that Alex has built up over the years that we use and reuse and evolve. But anyway, these archives are really awesome. So I pulled a few things out. Let me just start with let's see, where is it now? Okay, this is from the 10th birthday stream.
Value, right? Okay, it's fine. Right, let's try and get it.
And notice how Alex is programming that little robot in the left. You have to look a little bit to see it, but he's got a little robot which is going to kick in here any minute.
Okay. I'm really tired and also have been drinking Okay, let's try and get going, do a bit more.
I'm gonna jump off to the end here.
Turn off.
Nice. It's Alex having fun. It was really a joy. Let's see next. This is from a this is from the live Codera event, and it's Alexandra, and I'm just jumping in the middle here, so I apologize for that. But I just I just love this stream.
On again. Ah, there it is. I think we might just be getting it through the microphone as well. Yeah, I don't think it's sharing.
All right, let me try again. I don't think it's coming through my microphone, but because I only have it in my headphones. But
okay.
Apologies for this. Share screen. Battle of technology. Yeah, it's sharing audio.
Okay.
Sorry, that was. I got them as one of the things I like about Alexandra's code is it's so nicely organized, and I love the way she's got things laid out and goes and selectively changes parameters. You can really kind of see her kind of walking through the code and responding to the music. It's really lovely.
Thank you so much. I feel the code is my instrument, and I prepare my instrument, and when I go to play, I play, I pull the strings or something. That's the way I love to see my code.
Next, I've got a selection of Shelly's, also from that live Codera stream, and I just love the audio here. It's just I can't see the screen as well, but and again, sorry for being so short, but just really love that one, Shelly. Good job.
Yeah, maybe you can share the link in the chat, because I think something was weird with the audio there. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, sorry for cutting things short there. That was Sarah's piece. Sarah, do you want to just say a few things about what that represents?
Yes, that's from when Cody played together at Neusberg in Berlin right after the ICLC conference in Madrid. And so I'm doing the visuals there, and the code is the visuals framework. And then the sound are the other two members of Cody, Kate Sicchio and Melody Lovelace. And I can't remember how they were collaborating on the sound at this time. I'm not sure if we had a shared server or if they were sort of both outputting audio at the same time and just mixing it live as we played. But so that's the three of us collaborating.
Nice. So we need to wrap up here. What's going to happen is that the Muxy system is going to kick us off the live stream. This group here won't get kicked off on StreamYard, but the live stream is going to kick in. So for the live stream, I just want to thank everyone for this group for participating. It was a really awesome discussion. And this will be part of the live stream playlist. So for TOPLAP 20, this will kick it off. So we can go back and listen to this. And for everybody that tuned in, thanks so much. Sorry we didn't do as much to try to draw you all in as audience members. That was a little bit challenging. Maybe we'll try it next time we do something like this. Try and make a little bit more active. But thanks everybody so much, and please stay tuned for the live stream. TOPLAP, Karlsruhe is going to be the first up, and they're doing a group stream, so we're hopefully everything works there. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, and happy birthday, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Great to see you all again after such a long time.
Yeah.
Thanks for organizing this.
Happy birthday.
Maybe we should do it again in 20 years.
Yeah, maybe the 50th anniversary. Or the 80.
See you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks to all the audience as well. I think we're still